Vamos a hablar de oportunidades de inversión cuando son las 5:26. Quedan menos de 10 minutos para que termine la cotización de los índices de renta variable europeos y nos acompaña Kate Mead, Investment Strategist Equities in AllianceBernstein. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, lovely to be here. Good afternoon.
Kate, AllianceBernstein have just released a research paper on thematic investing. Can you tell us a bit more about thematic investing?
Yes, you are correct. My colleagues here at AllianceBernstein have just published a paper on thematic investing. And it's an area that we've been investing in for many years. So we're really excited about themes and all things thematic investing. And we've published this paper at a time where short-term market sentiment has become more prevalent. And thematic equity portfolios are quite a popular antidote to this. And we're seeing this in the numbers as well. So thematic assets under management are more than $830 billion as of June this year. But that's around 6 times greater than a decade ago. So we're definitely seeing it in the numbers. And thematic investing for us focuses on capturing opportunities from large and transformative global trends. And that might be things like climate change, demographic shifts, and things like technological advancements. And as you might imagine from these types of examples, thematic strategies identify themes with strong multi-year pathways, and that can offer investors a way to align their investments with those broad global developments. And in fact, our research into themes suggests that they often trigger long-lasting capital investment cycles, which again can make themes really attractive. A theme like communications infrastructure, for example, which evolved through the 1990s, saw a lot of sectors related to this theme outperform, and that was by around 8%. But that's not enough to know that you'll have good returns. You also need to have broad company opportunities relating to that theme to get that diversified exposure. And one other thing that we would just note about thematic investing is often traditional portfolios are defined by characteristics like value or growth. Thematic portfolios will tend to have their first definition built around a theme or several themes as the primary driver of future growth.
How should an investor define themes?
So that's really important for both the investor to understand what they're investing in and to know that the asset manager is deploying their strategy as they should be. So it's really important as a first step to have a clear approach to defining themes. And for us, a theme should be investable, but also long-lasting. And I've just mentioned this before, but it's likely to unfold over a number of years, and often that's longer than a typical economic cycle. And we'd also hope to see a massive investment occurring related to a theme as well. But defined themes might be related to things like long-term policies, maybe a physical or social shift, but it's not always easy to spot that when it's happening at the beginning. They can be small and not the big themes they eventually turn out to be. So when we think about identifying themes, it requires quite a bit of fundamental analysis of a range of factors that might include things like market trends or demographics, perhaps regulation, changing consumer behavior and things like that. But we also want themes to be broad enough to offer ample investment opportunities. So it's not enough to have a very, very narrow range of things that we can invest in. And once we've identified the theme, it's also really important that the investment process is there to back it up. So themes must be investable. For a public equity fund, that might mean something like a sufficient universe of traded, high quality, liquid companies that are also linked to that theme. So that's really important for us when defining a theme.
Kate, that's helpful context, but it must be a challenge to identify themes that are likely to persist over time?
Yeah, definitely. As I've mentioned, sometimes themes are really easy to spot with hindsight. So when we're looking back, we can see that a theme has taken place, but it can be challenging to think about that forward-looking approach. So we need a lot of research, as I've mentioned, and it can be really easy to buy into a compelling story. But we also need to understand that it's difficult to translate that into investment success. So if we think about a durable shift, the pandemic, for example, that we had starting in 2020, now that wouldn't necessarily meet our definition of a theme, because although it felt like it at the time, it didn't really last quite long enough to meet some of those definitions I've mentioned about being multi-year. And interestingly, whilst a lot of companies benefited from the pandemic, at the time, there wasn't necessarily a pool of companies whose business models were explicitly aimed at addressing COVID-19. Something like the changing nature of the workplace, however, we're all experiencing that right now. And that was accelerated by the pandemic. And we think this could be something that represents a more robust and investable theme. For example, it's an area of transformational change. It's been happening for several years already and will likely have several more years to come. But also there are a number of companies that have their business models made to address both the opportunities and also the challenges presented by workplace transformation. So that might be something that meets a long-term theme definition.
Kate, if a client of yours is interested in including thematic portfolios, how can they position this in their wider asset allocation plan?
Yeah, so I think it's often tricky to place a thematic strategy in the asset allocation of clients, but it's definitely something that we're seeing investors adopting more of. And we've seen some data recently that in 2023, 46% of investors who were surveyed said that they actually plan to increase their exposure to thematic investing, and that's typically via thematic funds. And we think here at AllianceBernstein that thematic portfolios can be a really good addition to client portfolios. It exposes them to areas of long-term growth opportunity, and it can also diversify portfolio returns. So they can be a really important part of a portfolio. And sometimes clients can pick themes that align with their own personal conviction as well, which is nice if you can exercise your own opinions on the market through how you're investing. So we think a robust thematic portfolio should have a clearly articulated process, as we've said, for identifying themes. How do they define those? And also making sure that the theme they're investing in is actually reflected in the allocation in the portfolio. So they should also be able to find those companies that benefit from that theme over time. And whilst themes are long-term, they're not static. So a big theme may be permanent over time, but the manager should also be able to demonstrate how they maintain their universe that sits under that theme. The companies that are benefiting from that theme might change over time. And so we would expect an investment manager to be able to demonstrate their approach to active maintenance of their investable universe. But what's also really important is you'd expect a thematic manager to have the same rigor and discipline that you'd expect in any active equity portfolio. And when we come to selecting an active manager, those are some of the things we should think about. But then when we put it in the portfolio, we think it should be a satellite position in a core satellite type allocation model. And we think there are some things a client should be aware of as well. So when we're thinking about themes, they often have biases, whether that's style or regional. And so clients should be aware of taking that unintended exposure if that's not what they're expecting. And thinking about time horizons, I've mentioned several times now that a theme should be multi-year and have a long structural pathway. And as themes can take several years to play out, the investor should also take a patient approach and a long-term investment horizon. So staying invested through that cycle is the best way to get the benefits from those long-term trends. So those are some of the things we would encourage investors to think about in terms of allocating a thematic strategy within their broader asset allocation.
Kate, my last question. Are there any risks that investors should be aware of before embracing thematic investments?
Yeah, so I think we've touched on a few of these already. First of all, thematic investments are a great part of an overall diversified asset allocation. But there are definitely some risks, and I think we've touched on these, but not having a properly defined theme. You don't want to accidentally invest in a fad rather than something that has a bit more staying power and a bit more growth opportunity to it. So we think that's really important upfront. And then having that universe that you can actually invest in. So is the theme investable? If it's not, then that's definitely a risk. So we want high quality companies that we can build a portfolio from. And then also for the client, thinking about how a thematic portfolio fits in their overall asset allocation. Is the manager clear and transparent about how they identify themes, and are they maintaining that universe actively? And so to mitigate some of these risks, it's just about working with active managers who have that clear, coherent process to selecting a theme. They have a robust framework for finding companies within the themes, and then they combine all of that with strong stock selection, portfolio construction, and risk management capabilities. So there's definitely risks, as there are with any type of portfolio, but we think these can be mitigated with some of that theme definition and then thinking about the rest of the portfolio process as well.
Kate Mead, investment strategist equity in AllianceBernstein. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.